All right, let's get started. Welcome back to week 2 in the Becoming a Bulletproof Buyer series. How to save money, reduce risk, and win in Seattle's competitive real estate market. As we're getting started, if you want to go ahead and throw in the chat, um, give us a little information about where you're at in the process currently. Where do you live? Where would you like to live? What area? We don't need your exact address. Where would you like to go? What neighborhood are you looking in? Would you like to be in? And where you're at in the process a little bit. Are you thinking about getting started and trying to figure out what you need to do? Are you getting pre-approved and starting to shop around? Are you actively in contract and trying to figure out that you got everything dialed in and taken care of? Let us know in the chat if you would. Can help me kind of tailor things and make sure that I'm matching the conversation to stuff that would be valuable to you guys today as we keep rolling through the process here. So we're going to jump right in and get things rolling. We'll cover the topics for the webinar really quick. So last week we talked about setting yourself up for success, went through a process overview, the overview of the team that you need. We're going to get a little more into that today. Went over what makes up your payment, what you should be looking at. We talked about some financing and funding stuff for you to keep in mind as you're getting in the process. Today, we're going to be talking about targeting a terrific team and getting those people on board that you need to work with, understanding what they do when you use them, and how to qualify them. Then next week, we'll get into strategic home and neighborhood selection. What should you be looking for in a house? What are the pitfalls? What are the things to avoid? Same with looking at neighborhoods, making sure that you're making good decisions and that you're happy about things when you do get into contract and move in. Then we'll be talking about winning ways to write your offer and things to consider in today's market. When do you want to write the offer? Should you waive or not waive? And how can you work on your leverage and stack the deck in your favor? Really excited about getting into that one. Thank you again for joining us. We do appreciate you being here. Today, we are going to be digging a little bit deeper around identifying the team that you need. Who are they and how do you qualify them? What do you look for when hiring a team? What do you look for when hiring an agent and a lender specifically? Who do you need in your supporting cast? What you should look for there? When do you start using all these different people? When do you need them? And I'm going to try to share some horror stories and probably some happy ones as well as we go through this. So quick recap of last week and what we covered. Again, I'm Marc Erickson, the founder of Apex, the Allied Property Experts. Amanda Condelius is on the left on your screen. She's our operations manager. Make sure the system and process is working well for us and our clients to get everybody where they want to be. And on the right is Alex Liatzis, our lead agent, who does a lot of the actual customer interactions and a lot of the customer service and facilitating everything, negotiating deals for us using the system that we have. So last week we talked about some of the benefits of buying a home, all the security that you get from being a homeowner, not having to worry about landlords and rent raises anymore, the pride of ownership and the accomplishment that is, and what it says about all the things that you've done in your life, both personally and professionally, to be in a position to buy a home. The benefits like creating wealth through appreciation, principal pay down. It's incredibly powerful. It makes a huge difference for people. Big advocate of it, and obviously I'm in this space, but that's one of my favorite aspects of it. One of my favorite things to talk about is the wealth creation aspects of real estate. And then of course a benefit that's often kind of overlooked but is still incredibly powerful, even if you're not an investor, are the tax savings that you can get from owning real estate. The mortgage deductions, things like that can really make a difference for you and can also help offset some of the costs of an increased mortgage payment versus renting, which is not a thing that I hear a lot of agents talk about, which I think is a little bit of a bummer. So last week we covered the process overview and timeline. How long does it take? What happens when you're buying a house? We talked about the pre-approval. When do you want to do that? Why do you want to do it? Just a refresher, you want to do it early. Get pre-approved early because it impacts so much about the home buying process. We covered some payment tips and hacks about how to lower your payment, how to save money over time. So if you didn't get a chance to see last week, really go back, watch the recording, see what's going on, see what you missed, and then you can definitely bring questions next week. And we talked about financing and funding. What are the differences in the two things? And what do you need to be prepared to do? Where can you look to get all your funding needs met and to put the financing together when you're looking at buying a house? Our intended outcome for this series and a little housekeeping is what we'll cover now. The first you want to keep in mind, oops, sorry, went a little fast there. So our intended outcome is really to inform and empower you to make good and confident decisions in your home buying journey. We know it's a huge purchase. It's often the largest purchase that people will ever make in their lifetime. We want them to be confident. We want them to be empowered. We want them to be informed so that they make good decisions. They don't put money at risk. They get the outcomes that they want to have. And that's why we're doing this free webinar series. Whether you're working with us or not, that's the experience that we want you to have as a homeowner. If you're working to home ownership, whether you're a first-time buyer or stepping up into a house or stepping into your first investment property or a second home, doesn't matter. That's the experience that we want you to have, regardless of who you're working with. And we hope that we can help you do that. A little bit of housekeeping. Please use the raise hand function. Don't just unmute and jump in and start speaking during the webinar. We want to keep everybody muted so that we can have it clean so that everybody can hear what's going on. You can use the Q&A function to ask questions or raise hands. I will have time at the end of the call to answer all the questions that everybody has. I can stay here for quite a while after the call today. I want everybody to leave satisfied and that they got their questions answered so they feel good about moving forward. But please do stay muted and quiet throughout the time. And remember, this is a no BS zone. We don't want anybody in the comments bullying. That's the B. S is there are no such things as silly questions. We are here to answer the questions that you have. We know you guys aren't in this process all day, every day like we are. So there's no silly questions. We want you to ask whatever you need to ask to make sure that you get your needs met. And I'm not going to give you any BS. I'm going to tell you the truth about what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it currently in today's market to help our clients get into houses and win their offers when they're going after a house. Some of it may be a little bit tough, but it is the truth about what's going on. We don't want to tell you just what you want to hear. We want to tell you what you need to hear to be successful in this process. Of course, we got to do a quick disclaimer. This is for informational and educational purposes only. This is what we're doing with our clients, but it may not fit for your situation or in your exact neighborhood. Some of the strategies that we use or discuss can work in some areas and not in others. Some of them work for some people's situations and not in others. We're not guaranteeing any results, especially no profit or returns, although this is not really an investor-focused webinar. These are our experiences in what we're doing. There is risk in real estate. You should always do your own due diligence, talk to your own professionals, make sure that you're comfortable and informed. We're not giving any legal, financial, or tax advice. We can talk about ideas and strategies, but do confirm with your own financial, legal, and tax professionals. All right. Got that out of the way. It's my most hated part of all of these things. So now let's talk about the team that you need and what to look for when you're hiring that team. So you're going to need a lender. We talked about that last week. This is often like in conjunction with the agent. Some people start with the lender first and then find the agent. Some people start with the agent first and then go to the lender. I was a lender, and I will strongly suggest that you start with an agent and then go to the lender, or that you talk with a few lenders. The reason being, different lenders have different strengths, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But you want to make sure that you can get a lender that's kind of matched to your scenario. And a good agent should have a few lenders in their Rolodex that specialize in different things. They all may be able to do all of them, but often lenders will have specialties or preferences. So you want to keep that in mind. You're going to need an inspector or two or three, at least a home inspector involved in the process somewhere, and likely a sewer inspector, really strongly suggested by us. You're going to need an agent, broker. You're going to want to have title and escrow on your team as well. You're going to want to, let me see if I can get these slides to work. Title and escrow. Now, title and escrow, you're not usually going to find them. You can, but you're not usually going to find them. Usually, the listing agent is going to steer title and escrow, but they are people that you'll need. Or your agent may have a good relationship with title and escrow. Depending on how crazy your transaction is, you may really need to steer title and escrow to meet your needs. Not typical in the retail market, often more in the investor builder space. They want to use specific title and escrow companies when buying because they'll have relationships where those title and escrow companies have all their documentation, understand the company entity, who needs to sign, all of that stuff. Then you're going to need some supporting members like additional inspectors, contractors, and consultants as you go through the process. And usually you will get connected to those through your team, either the lender or the agent. Let's talk about some basics of what you need to look for when targeting your team. Start here. First, you want to understand, do they have experience? And this goes across platforms, lenders, agents, contractors, inspectors, doesn't matter. Do they have good experience in this space and doing what you need to do? Do they have a good reputation? I don't say great reputation. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but do they have a good reputation? Do they have the right expertise? So you want them to have done this before, but do they also have the correct expertise for exactly what you need? If you're a veteran trying to get a loan, are they really good at VA loans? If you're trying to buy a house and do a house hack, are they good with rehab loans? If you want to do an FHA 203K, throwing a bunch of language at you, that's a renovation loan provided by the FHA. Do they have experience in that? There's a lot of unique requirements for an FHA 203K loan. Great loan, a lot of paperwork, a lot of requirements. Not all lenders like to do them or are qualified to really do them well. Are they going to be available and responsive to your needs and your timelines? Do they have the right amount of support to you? There's a lot of one-man shops, which is totally okay, as long as they have enough bandwidth to support you fully. If you're working with a one-man shop or smaller contractors and they're getting too busy, they may not be able to give you the support that you need. So you want to understand that. And I think this is often really underutilized or not paid enough attention to, like, what are the vibes? How do you like these people? How do you feel when you're talking to them, when you're interacting with them? Do you feel good about it? Do you like the interaction? Home buying can be a stressful process. There can be a little bit of an emotional roller coaster. We try to keep it like a kiddie coaster and not like a big crazy theme park coaster, but there can be some ups and downs, some things that happen. You want to be working with somebody that you feel good with, that you work well with, that you trust to get you through the process. So the vibes are really worth paying attention to. There's no reason to go through a stressful process with somebody that you don't like when there's other options out there. So I do encourage you to pay attention to that. And just that criteria alone may eliminate a lot of you from wanting to work with us. We know we're not everybody's cup of tea, and we're not trying to be. We're trying to help the people that vibe with us and that we vibe with get where they want to be, because we want to have a good time while we're working as well. So let's talk about some basics of due diligence when you are targeting your team and building your team and what you should look for. These are really broad. A lot more can be done depending on the exact niche that you're going after. You may want to do more or less work. Well, I wouldn't really say less work than this. If you're looking at anybody who is licensed, agent, lender, contractors, inspectors, you probably want to check on their license status. You can usually do that on the state websites. You can go find, is their license active? What's the status? You'll be surprised. You may be surprised. There are a lot of contractors and different people who like had a license, but it's no longer active for any number of reasons. Some can be valid. They just forgot about the renewal. But you want to understand that. And even if they forgot about the renewal, that says something about their organization, systems, and processes. So are they currently licensed? You want to check their insurance and bond. Just because a contractor got licensed, and this is typical with contractors, especially, the insurance and bond is an important thing to dig into a little bit further. Is it still valid? Is it still in effect? If they're just doing little handyman stuff, may not be a big deal. You may not even care if they're licensed for just little tiny things, adjust this faucet or whatever. But if you're looking at a larger job, check to see if the insurance and bond are still in effect, live, and active. Some guys have been known to get their insurance and make the first payment, so they get the certificate and then not make any more payments. And they show everybody that certificate for a year, but they're not actually insured. They're not actually bonded as they're doing the work. And if you run into a problem, you don't have any recourse in that situation. You want to look at both positive and negative reviews. This one I think is actually really important, and why I said you want to have somebody that's good and not necessarily great. It is hard to make everybody 100% happy 100% of the time. And in today's day and age, with all the Yelp reviews and Google reviews, people will hire bots or bot companies to go and do a bunch of just positive reviews to make them look really good and climb up in the ranking. That is something that's always something I pay attention to. Like, wait a minute, nobody's ever been frustrated with you? Have you even done any business if nobody's ever been frustrated with you? We work really hard to have great reviews. We go after our clients to give us great reviews, but we want honest reviews as well. We know sometimes things come up, sometimes things happen. So I don't give negative reviews just an automatic no. I actually learned a trick about restaurants from a guy I was doing some coaching with, and I found it quite helpful. He looks into the reviews to see why, and he likes restaurants that have a fair amount of bad reviews. If the reviews are about the price, if the reviews are not about the quality of food, but about the price, then he knows the food is probably good and the people were just cheap that were leaving the review. So I like to read the negative reviews and see what it is. A lot of people will complain about things that don't matter to me. And I like to see how the companies handle the reviews and the feedback on them, because I think I can learn a lot about them from that. So I suggest reading both positive and negative reviews and then making your own decisions. You can also ask them for references, past clients that you can go talk to and see how satisfied were they, would they recommend them again? And you can often look for contractors. You can see if you want to get really crazy or you're doing a really big job. This is something that I rarely even talk about investors about. But here's another thing that you can do if you want to go super next level on contractors is go try to find out where they pulled permits, get the addresses of those properties, and then try to find the owners of those properties and call them. So you're getting like not their cherry picked guys, but other people that you can talk to. I wouldn't do that unless you were looking at a really big project, new construction, 150, $200,000 plus remodel for a general. Then I might get into that, but I wouldn't really do that. The last thing that you can do, especially with contractors, and you is check current projects. Ask them, hey, can I swing by? What kind of jobs are you doing right now? Where are they? Can I go by and take a look and see what's going on? And I'm not going to dig into all the different things to look for, but just go check it out. See what you think. How does it look? How does it feel? And if you want more on that, you can ask at the end, and we can dig into it during the Q&A segment. So digging into some specifics now by team member of who you're going to need, right? Back to the lender, the guy who controls all the money. Here's a big list of questions that you can ask them. How much do they do in loan volume? How many loans? Typical closing costs. I'll just click through some of these. I won't read them all to you. You guys can take a look at them and see what you think. Some of the ones that kind of are important right now, we highlighted in yellow for you. How fast can they close on a deal? Right now, speed can be an incentive that can win you offers. So that's a question that I would ask them. Like, once I'm set and good to go, how fast do you think we could close if we needed to be in a rush situation? Because that can win you a deal. A couple days can matter. So that's a good thing to know. If they're a traditional bank or some of the credit unions that people like to use, they're not going to be able to go as fast as some of the other lenders that are out there. And it could cost you a house that you like. Speed can kill deals. So you want to be aware of that. You want to understand, when do they underwrite? So there's a few different steps in the pre-approval process. There's pre-qualifications and pre-approvals. Pre-qualifications aren't worth anything. Don't even get one. Pre-approval is what you want to have. If you're working with B of A, first I would say don't work with B of A and go find somebody else. But they'll do a pre-qualification, which is a pre-approval, but the language gets messed up in real estate, and people will think your offer is weaker than it is. So you want to get to a pre-approval. Once you're pre-approved, then there's being fully underwritten, not automated underwritten, fully underwritten. You want to see, when will they fully underwrite you? If you will find a lender that will pre-underwrite you before you have a property identified, there can be value in being able to say that you're fully underwritten. It is not huge. It's a little cherry on top of the cake, but there can be value in being fully underwritten. So it's worth it to know, or how long it will take. And then I would ask them, who will you work with most directly? Some lenders are one-man shops and they handle everything themselves. Some lenders have really big teams with a bunch of people that handle different parts of the process. You want to see, like, am I only talking to you at the beginning and then never hearing from you again? Will you be my point of contact? Who's going to be my point of contact? Even we have a team. Alex and I are involved in the front end of the process. Once it's under contract, you are more often talking to Amanda and checking in on stuff like that. We are helping clear conditions and make sure stuff is happening, but the updates and everything are coming from Amanda. We're all included on all the communication. You might want to check on some of these items as well when you're talking to a lender. One thing that I always like to ask people is what is their process specifically to help me succeed? One, I like to see, do they have a process, or are they just running around flying by the seat of their pants, putting fires out everywhere they go? Or do they have a process and a timeline to move you through, keep things smooth, keep protections in place for things like your earnest money, and to make sure that everything is getting done that's supposed to be getting done? And then how does that process help you? I think that's a great question to ask. What does their ideal client look like is another question that I like to be able to ask, because they might specialize in first-time home buyers and not know a lot about jumbo loan programs or exotic loans for special things like doctors that can have their own loans. They might not know about things like RSUs, which are a thing that a lot of the tech people use. So you want to see, like, what's their ideal client like? Have they worked with somebody like you in the past, and are they really set up to help your situation? You want to be cautious, or at least be informed about if you're working with somebody that is not well versed in your situation. Not saying don't do it. Sometimes they're going to be really hungry and they're going to do a great job because they want to move into a new space. They want to be really dialed in. They're going to be super attentive to it. So just because they haven't done a bunch of it doesn't mean don't work with them. It just means be aware of that going in. And then I always ask a question along the lines of, what can you do to help them? What can I do to help you? How can I be a good client to work with? What do you need from me to make the process easy and successful for you? I want to work with people that are good and easy to work with, and I want to be somebody that's good and easy to work with. So I like to check in and see what can I do to make their life easier, to help them out. Not that they're serving me, but I don't want to be a headache by accident for anybody that I'm working with. Very similar questions for an agent. There's some new stuff that's happened in the space. So there's some new questions you might not have thought about asking or might not be aware of asking. One of the first ones I would ask is, what's your process for buyer agency agreements right now? If they have any hesitancy in how they respond, if they can't answer that question, if they feel really insecure, I would say that's a red flag that you want to be aware of. If they don't know how to handle that, or what they want to do and how they can handle their compensation, how confident are they going to be and how good are they going to be about negotiating for you and making sure that your contract is dialed in and that your process is set to protect them? How they adjusted to the new commission environment. Look for the response again. A lot of agents are going to be leaving the business. Some already have, due to some new legislation that's happened in the state in advance of a big National Association of Realtors lawsuit, which you may have heard about. If they don't know how to handle that situation and that decision that we all knew about for months was coming, Washington's way in front of it. It's awesome. We're really in good shape here. Well, good agents are in good shape here. If they don't know how to handle that, how are they going to handle surprises? What are they going to be doing to be proactive in your deal to make sure that you're not running into problems if they're not even protecting themselves and their business in that situation? And the last one, do they have a process for what to do if the seller doesn't offer compensation to them? You may know now sellers can list their house for zero buyer agent commission, right? Similar to like a for sale by owner. It's not really happening now, but this is all fairly new still. So it could start happening while you're in the process. You want to see, what do they want to do? Do they have a process for how to handle that? Are they going to show you houses with zero commission? What are they going to do to make sure that your needs get met in that situation and that you don't have surprises or have to have uncomfortable conversations later on in the process? What's their process look like if you work with them? If you do choose to engage with them, what does the process look like? How do they work with you? How do they take care of you? Same. Who will you be communicating with mainly, and when will you be communicating with them? What kind of help or support do they have? Again, are they a one-person shop, which can be fine because then they're in control and they're managing everything, which has pros and cons. They also might have a support team like we have here, where it's Alex's and I's job to help our clients find deals, negotiate those deals, get them in contract, and then it's Amanda's job to make sure that the contract process happens flawlessly. Pros and cons to both ways. Understand what it is and what you feel more comfortable with. I like somebody that has a little bit of team, whether it's a contractor, lender, doesn't matter, title and escrow, inspectors. Because if somebody gets sick, there's somebody there to pick up the slack. If something happens, there's somebody there to jump in and make sure that everything continues to go smoothly. How do they like to communicate? Are they going to communicate with you in the way that you want to be communicated with? Are they only comfortable in text and you only want to talk on the phone? Or do they only want to talk on the phone and you want to text and email because you're busy and you're not a big fan of the phone? See how they like to communicate and what's effective. Again, do they work with clients like you? Are they familiar with your situation? Do they do first-time home buyer stuff? Do they do luxury? Do they do second homes? Do they work in waterfront? Are they familiar with clients like you and what is unique about your situation? And when was the last time that they worked with a client like that? What's a tough deal they had? What happened and how did it go, right? See how they handle some adversity. Not every transaction is just smooth sailing all the way through. What was a tough deal that they had? What was a client that was hard for them to get a home for? How did they handle it? What did they do? What was the outcome? I have a few stories I can share if anybody wants to ask about them after the end when we're in the Q&A session. But I think that you can learn a lot about somebody in how they show up in tough times and adversity. What do they do? How do they respond? And what was the end outcome? Who do they look for in title and escrow and why? Who do they like to work with? How important is it to them? Why do they like them? I think you can learn a lot about people and how they show up by what they like to do with others, right? We often like to do things with people who are like us or similar to us. So when you see what they like about title and escrow, you might get a little insight into what's important to them or what they put value on. This is really important. They have a good list of supporting vendors and contractors if needed. Whether you're looking for brand new construction or a fixer upper, you want to make sure that they have support to help you with anything that could come up in the process. You would be amazed at some of the horror stories I have around new construction stuff and things that have happened. When I talk more about the sewer inspectors, I will tell a story about a sewer deal and why it's important to have a really good team there. And if you haven't yet, review our 10 questions guide. There's some other questions in there that are not incorporated here that can be great. You should have got it via email. If you don't have it yet, shoot us a message, let us know, put it in the chat. We'll get you that guide and you can have that to be able to ask questions of your agents and to help screen them. When it comes to targeting your team, I wanted to talk a little bit about, should you even do it? Is it the best use of your time? It can be hard to build a team of the professionals that you need. So I wanted to talk about that. Like, is it even worth the effort for you to be out doing that when you're probably busy, living your own life right now, running kids around or working extra hours or having fun, having hobbies? Is this an area you need to focus your energy on? And is it really going to create a good return for you, that investment? It takes a lot of time and due diligence to find good specialists, whether they're general contractors or any of the other team members that you need. It can be really hard to find good ones and to find people who bring good value, which I would say I would kind of define in this context as a fair price for great work. That's what I would define value as. It can be really hard to find them. You can find some really bad contractors who are really good, work really cheap. You can find some really great contractors who work really expensive. You can also run into a really bad contractor who's really expensive, and you don't want to do that. Your agent and lender generally have a vested interest in the referrals that they have. So they have a network, they're in the space, they're looking for this all the time. They want to be able to provide extra value to their clients. Ideally, I would say if they're good, and they have an interest in making sure that those contractors take care of those clients, and those contractors have an interest in taking care of the agent's clients because the agent and the lender are good referral sources to those contractors. So they don't have to go market for all the business because the agents are taking care of them. So there is a vested interest in good referrals from leveraging your agent's team, and that can make your agent a advocate on your behalf because it's their contractor. They don't want a bad reflection. So they're going to be in trying to help with price, trying to help with schedule, trying to make sure that everything stays on course. And if things get off course, it's easier for them to jump in and try to help with some course correction. Now they have vetted specialists as well. There's almost 200 agents in our office right now. So I have a database of contractors and vendors and specialists from all the other agents in my office. We're always sharing resources back and forth. And it's always people that other people have worked with that they're recommending and I'm recommending back to them because we want to keep people we like busy. So they've been vetted. Now, vetted isn't guaranteed, right? There's a couple risks that you can run into, especially with general contractors around that. Not everybody that has been good stays good. Life circumstances, business growth can drive things. There was a contractor who a ton of investors were using a few years ago. They got really hot. They got a great reputation. They were doing really good work, and they started to get really popular and they wanted to grow. They got a little too big for what they could handle, and their quality really started to suffer. And sadly, it started to suffer for two clients of mine. So even the vetting process that I do, and having gone to see their jobs, haven't been a contractor, haven't been in the space, knowing them, I just caught them at a time when I couldn't see the issues coming up. So vetted is not a guarantee, but it is a hell of a lot better than not vetted. That experience showed me really how expensive contractors were. It cost me about a $50,000 listing because they did some pre-listing work for me with the client that got really frustrated and fired me before we even got a chance to list the property. I don't win them all. So that was expensive there for me. And I referred them to a really good friend of mine who they didn't do a great job. And that friend ended up having to hire somebody else to finish the work because they couldn't hold the schedule. So they just couldn't keep people working, and they couldn't manage all the jobs that they had in the timelines that they had committed to. So that was expensive for my friend and expensive for me, and the damage that it did, in my opinion, in that relationship. We're still good friends. I just feel like shit about it all the time. And then another thing, when you're trying to build your own team, like, do you want to risk your earnest money or missing deadlines around somebody you found off of Google or in the grocery store on a flyer coming to do something? Do you really want to jeopardize the house that you want to have over trying to cobble together a team? And then do you want to, are you aware of retail versus investor pricing? This is a thing that kind of is a surprise to a lot of people. And it's, I guess I just been in it so long, it's normal for me. But there's a couple of things to be aware of. There's kind of two types of contractors. There's like custom retail contractors that are really homeowner facing. And then there's investor type contractors that are more like subs that are general contractor facing, or they're more investor facing. You want to be aware of what you're looking for, how involved you want to be, and the experience that you want to have. The investor contractors are generally less money, but they're a very different experience than a retail contractor. Way more hands-on. They are nowhere near as polished. They're nowhere near as organized, and their bedside manner is generally nowhere near as good as a more retail homeowner-facing contractor. I will almost always refer out retail contractors. Now, I do get some pricing controls from the retail facing contractors. I almost never use guys that you hear advertising on the radio or TV. Those guys are like super retail. That's a whole different animal. But I do use people who are geared to homeowner facing stuff. Not all contractors want to work with investors, because investors can be their own kind of pain in the you know what. So I like the guys who have a really good bedside manner, who have good operations, and who are fair on their pricing to refer out to homeowners to manage stuff. If I'm managing things for a client, then I might bring in the investor guys because I know how to manage them and how to set it up and what it is. But you want to be aware of that, because you might find an investor grade contractor whose price looks really good, but their management fee from you is going to be high, and time and energy that you have to do, and in potential corners that they might want to cut that you'll have to know to catch them on. So you want to be aware of that. That's one of the risks when trying to find your own contractors. And a lot of people just aren't aware of the type of contractor that they're dealing with. So they think they're getting a retail customer facing contractor for investor based pricing, but they're not, and they get frustrated, but they really picked the wrong tool for the experience that they were wanting to have. Let's talk a little bit about the inspection team that you're going to need. Assuming you do want to go find your own and your own team, every agent should have a good home and sewer inspector, actually a few of them, and an oil tank inspector or two. But if you want to find them, you want to ask them, like, how fast can they get you in? How quick can they respond? And are they a solo operation or multiple people? Very important here, especially the home inspector side. Because oftentimes when you find a house that you want to have, the contingency timelines are critical. We'll be talking more about that in the week 4, but you want to see, like, can Can you get me in? And if it's a one-man shop, they might not be able to juggle things. If they get behind, if they have something come up, you're just at more risk of not being able to honor your timeline, of losing the deal, never even getting the chance to go after it. So I like inspectors that have multiple people working with them, even though I have a bench, a Rolodex with a good bench, deep bench of inspectors that I can use. Do they work in the area, and are they in the area that you're shopping in often? Or are they going to be somebody who's usually working out here? I found a great inspector that I like, a buddy, the guy I used last time, but he's up in Skagit County. It's going to be a nightmare for him to try to get down to Beacon Hill. Like, are they in the area? Is it going to be easier for them to get to your house and do the inspection? It's a nice little bonus, but will they provide repair price estimates? The inspectors that we like to use have a software built in to their inspection reports that will not only pull all the items that they say need to be fixed or suggested, but they pull from a database that contractors can use on how much repairs should cost. So they give you not only the inspection report, but a cost estimate on what that should or could cost you to do, which can inform your offer, your price. Do you want to do the work yourself? Do you want to make the seller negotiate? It's a great added benefit if you find somebody that can do that for you. Will they check for additional things like mold, lead, asbestos, moisture, all that stuff? Our inspectors can do infrared to check for leaks of like heat sealing or missing insulation behind the walls that you can't even see, which is really cool. They can test mold. They will test lead and asbestos. Those are invasive tests. You got to take samples out of the house. So you usually need to get additional permission from the seller if you're going to do that. But you do want to know if that's available, if you want it. And then what does their pricing look like for home inspections? When you're looking at sewer and septic, this is a really critical one. Do they do the repair work as well? And will they give you a discount or credit on the repairs if they do? If you get an inspection from them and there's repairs needed, will they credit back some of the inspection cost if they're going to do the repairs? You want to be aware of, if they do the repairs, they may try to sell the work instead of just the inspection. I have a couple, my home inspector does sewer inspections as well. So I usually do a combination, and there's a savings in that because they're already on the site. But I also have a different company that I like to use for sewer inspections that only does the inspections. They don't sell any work. And I used to think that was kind of silly, but I had an experience that I mentioned earlier that I'll talk about now. There used to be a sewer inspection company. I'm not going to name names here, but they were really well regarded sewer scope company, and they did great stuff, man. They could locate stuff. It was really cool, and they were fast. They had a big team. They were all over the place. We could get sewer inspections 24 to 36 hours all the time with them. It was great. Their prices were awesome. Well, they kept growing and their prices kept going up, which was okay because the service was great. What ended up happening is they added in the repairs as well. And then they started really trying to sell repair work. So I used them on a listing I had here in Bellevue for a pre-inspection, which is what we do on our listings. And they came out and did the sewer scope, and they said they ran into a problem and there was a break in the line and it was really bad and had to be fixed immediately. They could barely get their camera through it. And so I had them locate it and show me exactly where it was and how far down it was. And it was thankfully still inside the house. So they quoted me like $5,000-6,000 to fix it. It was a few years ago now. The line was only a foot under the floor at that point in time. So I knew, like knowing what I know, okay, I've got some guys, I can get this cement broken, get this floor rolled back, get the cement broken, get access to the line in a couple hours of labor. Knew a plumber who could come out and fix it for a couple $100, backfill it, rough cement, and away we go. I could have got it done for about $1,000. So pretty easy deal, but I was still like, something doesn't seem right. And they couldn't get the line the whole way. So I called a different guy that doesn't do the repair work. He came out, ran the line, got through basically no problem. And once I had double checked the work and compared the two sewer scope videos, I saw they were there mainly trying to sell work. Haven't used them since. But that's one of the things that can happen. That's one of the thing, little risk you want to be aware of when you're looking at them. Will they provide you a video of the sewer line? That's a thing that you really want to see. Will they locate the line and provide the depth of pipe, especially if there's an issue? If you're getting a sewer scope, you want to understand how deep is the pipe and where is it? Because if they do the work, that's going to impact the bid. And if they don't do the work, but you can give that information to another contractor, you can get a bid or an estimate much faster, and they may not even have to come out if you send them the video and that information. We talked about last week, sewer repairs can be one of the biggest things that you're going to end up needing to do on a home. So getting that information can be really important. Is the repair in the street? How deep is it? What's going to have to happen? Being able to locate and get the depth of the pipe is huge. Getting video of the issue is huge because you can send the video to a repair company and they can say, oh, we can just jet that out, or we can fix that issue by lining it instead of digging the whole thing up. And that's great information to have. So you want to be able to get that video and to see, does the guy who's doing the scoping, do they jet lines? Do they do the lining inside of the pipe? Great questions to be asking them. When you're looking at oil tanks, do they do the soil testing and the decommissioning or the removal of the tanks for you, or do they just do the testing? So those are some key questions to ask those contractors that you're working with. Moving into some other supporting members, probably most of you guys won't need these, but some of you may. So I want to spend a little time going over some of these for you. When you're looking at things like generals and subcontractors for things, if you want to try to be your own general, it's just little stuff. You want to see what's their schedule and availability to go and inspect the house and create a bid or an estimate. If you're getting an inspection contingency and you get in contract and you've got a 3-day inspection contingency, day one, hopefully you can get the inspection. That means you got 2 more days to get information before you got to respond with a yes or no to the seller. If your contractor says, I can't get out there fast, then they might not be the right contractor for you, or you might not get full value out of getting the inspection, seeing what's going on, and being able to make an informed decision. Will they do a free bid or estimate? There are starting to be some guys who are charging for the bidding estimating service because they're kind of tired of so many people doing free bids and then never getting the work. So they're offering bidding and estimating as like a little addition, as a little service or an additional call. And then if you hire them, they'll credit the back. You want to see, do they do straight bids, fixed bids, or time and materials on their estimates? And which way do you want to go? There's pros and cons on both of those. It's a whole other webinar series about working with contractors. Are they available to do the projects right now? Do you want to try to get them done pre-closing? Is it stuff that you can do later on? If you need to get it done before you move in and they're booked 6 months out, probably not a great fit for you. If you're looking at a handyman or at smaller items, understand exactly what they can handle. Not all handymen are created equal. Some guys will do sheetrock, some guys won't. Some guys will do minor plumbing or electrical. Some guys won't. You want to understand exactly the stuff that they can handle if you're looking for like a handyman kind of guy. Can they give you an estimate or a bid just off of an inspection for simple issues? Send them the inspection report. They take a look at it and say, oh, we could probably take care of that stuff for you for X. Between the MLS pictures of the house, video walkthroughs, and inspections, they can get a lot of information from the property. They may be able to do it without even going out there if it's simple stuff. If it's more exotic, if there's rot, foundation issues, roof, they're going to want to measure. Some things they're going to need to see, what does the access look like and physically be on site. But they might be able to get you an estimate or a ballpark just from the online resources. Will they provide the materials, or do you? This is a spot where I think a lot of people make a mistake. They say, oh, I'm going to save some money. I'll get all the materials. When you decide to get all the materials, you are taking a much bigger risk than you think you are taking with the schedule, with warranties, with headaches, with all kinds of stuff. Not paying their markup on materials is usually not the best use of people's time, and just having a contractor who will do all of it and is responsible for all of it. It's their job to get the right plumbing fixture, the right sink, a toilet that fits. It's their job to make sure all of that stuff is happening and good to go, instead of your responsibility. You get the wrong stuff and then they show up and can't do anything, and they can't get back in the house for you for 5 days because they got other commitments. That $100 savings you just tried to make just cost you a lot of headache. Then any warranty or guarantee that they provide when they're doing the work for you, what does that look like? Is it workmanship only? What do they do? How do they make sure that they'll get you taken care of? Should there be any mishaps or things going on? Then we'll talk quickly about specialty consultants, especially with what's going on in the area right now, with so many people looking to buy places that you can put additional units in, either inside or outside of the house. An arborist can be one that you want to have They map and classify the trees. There's a difference between an arborist and a tree cutter. Some arborists also cut trees, but not all tree cutters are arborists. So you need a certified arborist to go out and look at the property. The architects might be able to give you some basic info, like I can give you basic info because I know a little bit about this from having some expertise in the space. Seattle just redid their tree code specifically. They have 4 different classifications of trees based on size and species. It's a little bit of a nightmare if you're trying to add some extra units in the backyard and a neighbor's tree is hanging over. You want an arborist because it can impact where you can build, how much you can build, how many trees you have to replant. You really want to understand that. You also might want to have a surveyor if there's a fence line that seems funny or something that's weird. If you need to locate some easements, if you're looking at doing a dadu, an extra unit in the yard, you're going to want to get the property line located, get the trees mapped on the property line, see really where everything is. The architect who's going to do the building plans, they can do what's called as-built, create the existing floor plans so they can map stuff out and see where you can move walls around. I have some technology that we're testing out right now where we'll be able to get those created in-house, which I'm excited about, but it's not ready yet. We're still trying to see if it's going to work how we want it to work. And the architect will also manage permits. Again, you're paying them money to do stuff that they're an expert at instead of you trying to do your own. I think there can be good value in that. The engineer, a typical engineer, handles the stuff inside of the house, the structural work. The architect designs the building. The engineer makes sure it'll stand up. You might also need a civil engineer, which is rare, but can happen in Seattle with all the slopes and the surrounding areas with all the slopes, the stormwater stuff, things like that. You might need a couple engineers and a geotech to do like soil tests, especially if there's a slope on the site or things like that. If it's downhill from a gas station, you might need some additional environmental engineers to make sure that the soil is not contaminated. Hazardous materials, asbestos abatement, testing and mediation. Maybe you got a stream somewhere close by, you need a wetlands guy. There's a whole ton of people that you may need on these projects. So you want to be aware, and that's where having, again, like a good agent and a good team on your side. Doesn't have to be us. These are things that you want to think about when you're looking at what do you want to do with the property? What does it need right now? They should be able to connect you to a bunch of reliable professionals who can take good care of you. So you want to understand, how do you get access to those resources and how do you want to spend your time? Do you want to be finding all of them, or do you want to get a list of 1, 2, 3 for you to be able to call and interview, see who you're really vibing with, check some pricing, make the decision on where you're moving forward? Now let's talk about when are you going to need them. If you're doing new construction, you need a bunch of this stuff even before you start offering. You're going to want to start trying to understand who you want to work with as an architect and who you want to have as a general contractor. Rarely are the same, but there are some design build companies out there. If you see somebody that's design build, they're architect and contractor under one house. They're usually a little bit of a premium for that, a little more of a boutique custom feel, which can be what you're looking for. It is great to have one point of contact. All the accountability is in-house, so there's less finger pointing, but there is a little bit to be paid for that. Usually you would start with an architect or a GC, and they would be able to cross-refer. We could refer to both, but some architects have contractors that they really like for certain types of projects. Some contractors have architects that they really like and have a good relationship with. So getting started there before you even get rolling in, so you can start to understand costs, timeline, scope of work, what they're going to do, when they're going to do it. And they can be involved in the land evaluation process for you when you're starting to really start shopping and making offers. If you're just looking at doing something with a heavy remodel or addition, I say but that's terrifying for a lot of people. The sooner the better, because when you're looking at a property, do you want to take the roof off? Or are you going to finish out the basement? Do you need to do an addition? You want to know who you want to talk to for an architect and a contractor to see what can be done about how much is it going to cost, because that's probably going to weigh in to your calculations. If you're going to do an AADU or a DADU, which is an attached additional dwelling unit, or a detached additional dwelling unit, which is kind of all the buzz right now. The last 2 buyers we got into contract, both are looking at doing that on their properties. You want to have the architect in general identified or have a direction that you're going by the time you get into contract, especially if you're not familiar with some of the risks and the costs. We can help with a lot of that in the pre-qualification, making sure this property should work. This is it. We're in different cities looking at different things all the time. But if you don't have an agent that has that, then you really want to get those guys identified before you get into contract to make sure that you can do what you need to do as part of the feasibility process, that you're buying the right property. If you're just doing standard small stuff, you probably want to have them identified by the time you're in contract is ideal, so that you can call and get a feel for what repairs are. Or you have somebody ready to call as soon as you get in contract, so you can move through the inspection or the feasibility process as soon as possible. If you're doing stuff, another consideration is, are you planning on doing stuff pre or post closing? If you're really comfortable and confident in that you're not buying a heavy fixer upper, that you don't need a contractor, you're super handy, then you might not need anybody until post closing and you can start working on stuff. But if you're not really handy, if you are looking at a fixer, if you're not sure what's going on, if you have a lot of reservation about it, you want to start identifying people beforehand. And then the other piece of the pre or post closing is, when do you want the work done? Sometimes, especially in a buyer's market, you can get it done pre-closing, negotiated pre-closing as a condition of sale, and make the seller pay for it. That's one extreme end of the spectrum. If it's really a seller's market, which a lot of stuff in Seattle is now, it's post-closing and you're paying for it. So those are two different things, but it can be negotiable, and it's stuff that we can talk about when we're talking about writing the winning offer and what do you want to do. But you do want to be aware of and mindful of that when you're looking at things as well. Let's talk about appraisers, because this is actually one of the main questions that we get. What's the appraiser? When does he call? Who calls him? How often? When do you use them? When's it happen? Appraiser is not the devil. Before I jump into that next slide, you guys get distracted. Appraiser is not the devil, but he can feel that way to both buyers and sellers. They are good. That it's different now than it was. If you haven't bought a house for a while or been around anybody that's bought a house for a while, it used to be, back in the old days before the crash, that the lenders controlled the appraisal relationship. And so that was back when I was a lender, actually. So I had a Rolodex of appraisers and could exert great influence on the appraisers if needed. That's not the case anymore. There's a new process now where all the appraisers all the orders get put through a clearinghouse to create some distance there, so the lenders can't play favorites. They can't control the appraisal to protect the bank. The banks want the lenders to be neutral third parties, non-arm's length from the transaction, to not have a lender that has so much leverage that they give the appraiser all their business, so the appraiser owes them favors. That's why they're not really on anybody's team, but maybe the banks, because it's really their job to ensure that the bank is safe from the valuation on the property. That if the contract is 800,000, the appraiser says the property could sell fair market based on their research for 800,000. We're going to be talking more about value and some flaws in the appraisal process in the next webinar, but they're not on anybody's team. They're not there to ensure that your property comes in at value on the contract or undervalue for you to try to renegotiate. They're going to do independent research in that process. They get engaged after mutual, before closing, typically ordered after inspections. There's a cost to appraisals. So normally you get in contract, you clear your inspection contingency, and the lender orders the appraisal. Then the appraisal comes back. Then the lender starts working on the final conditions and getting the documents ready to go to escrow. That's kind of the typical process of when you need the appraiser. You are never going to call an appraiser yourself unless you're trying to get your own value on your own house for some reason. Usually that's a divorce or estate situation when somebody is contacting an appraiser directly themselves. They provide an outside opinion, expert opinion of the value of the property. I should put expert in parentheses there. Not all appraisers are created equal, just like not all lenders and all agents. Sometimes you may need a second appraisal on a property, but their focus is to protect the bank's cash, not protect your deal, not get you the house, not make the seller feel good about themselves, to protect the bank's cash. Values can be a tricky thing to determine, and that's one of the flaws in the process that, due to time constraints, we will dig into more in the next one. So we're just about at the hour. I was hoping to wrap up with an hour with the Q&A session, but got a little long in explaining all of this stuff. Hopefully this helped answer some questions, gave you guys some good information in this before we shift and move into the Q&A part, which I'll turn the presentation off and get everybody on camera and see what's happening. and start answering questions. But before we do that, quick recap of what we covered today. Talked more about the team that you need, who are the key players, what to look for when hiring a team, what are the qualities that you want in an agent and a lender specifically, what should you be looking for when you're hiring your supporting cast, when do you start engaging a lot of these team members. Shared a couple little stories. I'll try to get into some more in the Q&A. Or you can ask us for some stories. We'll be sharing some stuff on social media as well. So what we're covering in the series, last week we talked about setting yourself up for success, the overview of the process and the team, what makes up your payment, financing and funding options. Targeting a terrific team was today. Next week, we're talking about strategically selecting your home and area. What neighborhood do you want to live in? Why? What should you be looking for? What should you be looking out for when selecting a home and neighborhood? And how do you do that in a way that's going to set you up for success? And then we're going to the last week, the fourth week, in 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about the winning ways to write your offer. What kind of leverage do you have? When can you apply it? And what's going on with it? So that wraps up the seminar. We will move into the question and answer session now. Thanks everybody for being here.